Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales Show. Today, my guest is Jordan Rassas, and in usual form, I think Jordan's going to do a brilliant job of introducing himself based on our conversation so far, but I thought I'd say a little bit about him first. So Jordan is the head of sales at Inenco Group. He is, quote, an accomplished business leader and consultant. So he's expert in the energy industry, and he's actually the youngest head of new biz sales and the youngest member of the senior leadership team that Inenco has ever had. So that's quite an achievement. Excellent student. He turned down Ivy League universities, went into the corporate world. He has been in the game for over a decade now. And yeah, I feel like anything I am going to say now, Jordan, is going to sell you short. So I think I've said some of the boring work related stuff. Yeah, tell us about yourself. And thanks for coming on, by the way.
No problem. Yeah. So thanks. Hi, Mark. Hi, everyone. I think thanks for the intro. It sounded brilliant. It sounded very glitzy. What it missed out was a lot of the journey. And I think for me, yes, head of sales at Inenco, yes, young member of leadership. But what I wanted to talk around today was actually what's put me into, well, A, what's put me in that position, or what I feel has put me into that position. But B, a lot of the what would you say, trials I've faced along the way. I was married and divorced at 21. I was an extremely successful salesperson that was also battling depression at 22 that culminated in an attempted suicide. I was trying to raise a family that's now grown to four children, three boys and one girl. And I think all along the way of this journey, there's just been absolutely crucial, critical life lessons. So I think to add to my intro would just be there's a whole host of other stuff that's non-sales, that's non-career related, that now I want to wrap all of this into one package, if you will, and just get it out there and be the person that I've needed, if nothing else, at various stages along the way.
Yeah, so maybe a good place to start is whatever you're happy to share. Maybe tell us a little bit about your background, what kind of, that path that brought you into sales.
Sure. So I was luckily I was intelligent as a child, whatever that means. I was gifted enough at school. I had a lot of issues with attention. I had ADHD, I had autism as a kid, so I struggled in class, but I was very clever, and I was also very ambitious. Now, when I was 17, my stepfather, who was like my father, died in a motorbike accident in Spain, gave me a real rough awakening, if you will, to adult life. And my then girlfriend at the time, at 17, told me she was pregnant, so I was going to be a father. So all of a sudden, from sunshine and rainbows, I liken it to being Simba chilling with Timon and Pumbaa. From a dead happy life, thinking that everything was rosy, overnight, almost, or what felt like overnight, my stepdad was gone, and I was suddenly needing to be a father. And I think that's when I fell into sales, Mark. Day one, I applied for 70 jobs. I did a 9 to 5, just applying for jobs. And Inenco was the first ever job I applied for. It was Inenco or trying to convince people to sign up for Sky TV in supermarkets. And Inenco was the first interview I went for. So I think I fell into that job. And what I realized very early on was that this is where I wanted to be. I looked around and I thought, why was I looking at Ivy League unis in the first place? The money I'm seeing people earning with sales and the quality of life these people have got, the life skills they're picking up, negotiation, conversation, and then the lives they've got, I want some of that. So right from an early age, I dedicated my life to sales. I dedicated myself to my industry. I would have no doubt done the same had I started at Sky, but I dedicated myself to the energy industry, and I really wanted to be successful. And I was lucky enough to achieve that success. I think fast forward, what then happened was I got married to my childhood sweetheart, who was the lady I had the baby with at 17, got married at 20, divorced at 21 when she left me for somebody else. And at the time, I really struggled with that. This was something that I thought was impossible to happen to me. I was flying, I was a young guy, 20s, in my early 20s, 100K plus per year, flying with work, and despite all this adversity that I'd been through, and then all of a sudden, bam, sideswiped. And I think this is where my first struggles came, because on the one hand, I was really, really successful in work. People saw me every year, generating $1 million plus revenue and earning handsomely on the back of that. And this isn't a gloat in any way, shape, or form. I was absolutely wasting my money within a week or so of receiving it. And I think that formed part of the problem, because on the one hand, I was doing really, really well in the sales environment. On the other hand, I was doing really, really bad in terms of what I felt anyway, doing personal perspective, because my marriage had broken down by 20. At 21, I had a stepdad that died on me, and I thought the world owed me for that. But I had all of this money, and that then led me to probably 3 or 4 years of what I would say is the wrong living. I lived very hedonistically. I was, again, fortunate enough to have money, but I lived in one of the most deprived towns in Northern England, in Blackpool, which saw me befriending the wrong types of people, wanting to do the wrong sorts of things with my life. And again, I think for me, 3 years of roller coaster emotions, different girlfriends, up and down contact with my children, not really knowing what my meaning was. This constant was always sales success, though. I built this baseline that I never ever wanted to drop back from. So regardless of what turmoil my personal life was in, this sales success was always my constant. And I'd say this all came to a head when I was 25. So, 5 years ago, 2018. And I was expecting my next, or I was with a girl, and we were looking at settling down and having a child together, which would have been my third child, which we did go on to have. And I needed to really grow up in life, and I decided to invest a lot of money in myself, because I thought, if this carries on, yes, I'll earn a load of money, but I attempted suicide at 21. This will happen again. These things will keep rearing their ugly heads, because money isn't the issue. I'm numb to it. Each commission check was a given. Each sale was a given. It was becoming scary. So I put that money into some of the best therapy, the best goal setting, some of the best life coaches that I could find. Some of the people who are now world famous on podcasts were at the time available for one-to-one sessions. And I think where I'm going with all of this is 5 years ago, something changed. And that then put the wheels in motion that really gave me everything I needed to draw on all of that trauma, draw on all of these negative experiences, and actually become everything that I needed and everything I wanted to be. And yeah, I think where I went to, or where I got to, and some of what I want to talk around today is, I then went about breaking my life down into 4 key areas and embarking on a different kind of journey.
Yeah, and so before we go on, and I probably should have kind of had a little preamble at the start of this conversation for anybody that's listening. Typically, we'll have people on this podcast that are talking about some strategic, some tactical stuff, a mix of salespeople, sales enablement, and so on. And this is a little bit out of form for us in terms of some of the stuff we're talking about here, but I think it is equally, if not more important than anything else we've talked about on here, and then anything else we will talk about on here, especially with what you're going to get into, Jordan, around these 4 areas. Obviously you can expand on that. Goal setting, that reverse engineering success, all of that stuff that we've talked about before, because you can have a great gig, a great job, doing well, smashing your numbers and everything. But if the rest of your life is a shambles, it may or may not be sustainable. But either way, it's not good for you in the long term. So you articulate it far better than I do. So I'll hand over to you now, Jordan. But I thought I'd just mention that, because I want people to know that this is super important.
No, absolutely. I think one thing I was lucky enough to realize, and I think this is where I've become really relevant, but I was lucky enough to realize early on that the one constant I had that got me through it was sales, was the ability to generate money for a corporation, which in turn would pay me a handsome wage, which meant that I had the best chance of weathering whatever floods came. So what I did, the first thing I wanted to do, pure and simply, was to become the best salesperson in the world. You know, that's the account I held myself to. I was looking at the top grossing earners at Salesforce, the top grossing sales coaches, and I threw myself into one-to-one coaching with them. I tore myself apart. You know, like a football player, I looked at who Ronaldo was, and then I held myself to account for why I wasn't playing for Real Madrid and why I was still doing the same thing I was doing in my small little town. And I really, again, embarked on a massive journey to what being a good salesperson looked like. You know, from one life-changing deal a year to maybe writing one or two life-changing deals a quarter, from maybe just about finishing first on my sales team to absolutely, you know, changing the quotas for the sales teams moving forward through some of the stuff that I picked up. So we'll impart some of that. But I think what I did and what I needed to do was, and the way I live my life now, Mark, is in four key areas. So first thing I did was broke my life down. So I looked at, okay, work and career, that's one area. Second area would be family and relationships. Third area would be my mind and my body. And the fourth area would be my purpose and my meaning. And I implore anyone listening to go and check out my LinkedIn, you know, and look at what my mind and body used to look like at the start of this, because in all of these areas, I felt like when I was 25, from a family and a relationship perspective, yes, I was having children, but I wasn't able to have the family relationships I wanted. I wasn't able to hold down the personal relationships I wanted. And my family was nowhere near where I needed it to be. Yeah. From a work and career perspective, yes, I was earning money, but I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best and to be constantly moving upwards and creating a life that I knew that I could create, and I knew that I had the potential. From a mind and a body perspective, again, you know, at the time I was 23 stone. I was 23 stone in weight. I had shoulder length hair, a beard down to my chest, and I pretended I was happy, but I really, really wasn't. I couldn't walk from the door to my office without being out of breath. And I thought that was the hand I was dealt. And that was the thing that my kids and my colleagues had to accept. And finally, from a purpose and a meaning perspective, I just had none. You know, I was earning a load of money, but I was really, really sad outside of work. First thing I did was I set goals in each of these areas. I think anyone listening to this is naturally lucky enough to be, in my opinion, lucky enough to be placed in the world of sales, because I think what the world of sales gives you is the best chance of achieving whatever it is that your goals are in all of those areas. I think the mistake most people make is they think sales is just about work, or a sales career is just about work. No, it's not. A sales career can absolutely filter into your family and your relationships goals. A sales career can absolutely filter into your purpose and your meaning. It can create your meaning or create something that you then use to create your meaning. And a sales career can absolutely challenge you in the development of your mind, and also help you with, I mean, I always say salespeople are the athletes of the corporate world. So, you know, from a holistic perspective, sales can be the framework that underpins all of that. First thing I did was I set an ideal for each of these four sections, 3 years out into the future, 5 years out, whatever you want to do. So let's say my life started now, 23rd of August. I'm a 30-year-old and my life is currently my life. I would look at this and I would say, right, in 3 years' time, so in 2026 by the 23rd of August, or if you want to do it for 5 years, in 2028 by the 23rd of August, if everything goes as it possibly could go, like in terms of going well for me, what would my ideal life look like from a family perspective? And I would paint a picture. And what I mean by that is, again, talking personally, do I want a girlfriend, a personal, intimate relationship? Do I want a wife? Do I want a mother for the family? Do I want all of my children in one place? Do I want to live in the countryside, in a city? Do I want to homeschool? All sorts of weird and wonderful, not just the materialistic stuff. You know, what do you want your family values to be? Your mannerisms. Have a real thought. And this can be really fun. You know, part of setting these goals can be a week long. You know, whack them in your notes on your phone, and as and when the thoughts come to you, just start adding them in there. You're not going to get the best for yourself if you try and force this in one exercise sat on the end of your bed. Work and career, exactly the same. You know, right now I'm doing really well as a salesperson. Again, you might be listening to this and you might not be doing really well as a salesperson. So you might want to become a successful salesperson. You might want to become a sales leader. You know, I dreamt of becoming a sales leader at the oldest energy business in the country, which was the company I started at. That was my absolute goal. So again, you might set a work and a career goal. You might want to own your own company, or you might want to just sustain what you've got currently and have a really successful career that takes minimum amount of time. There's nothing right or wrong, and everyone's going to be aiming at different things there. But the key thing is actually to at least work out what you want 3-5 years down the line. Thirdly, mind and body. You know, from a mind perspective, what I mean by that is, what shape do you want your mind to be in 3 or 5 years down the line? And I don't just mean growth. You know, for me, yes, I'll talk often about how many autobiographies I read, how much I study, but you might want your mind to just be able to function at a family meal and not blow up because you're full of cortisol, because you're flooding yourself with that much work and that many to-dos, that actually one little thing triggering you at dinner, like gravy running out, causes you to lose your mind completely. So you might just be aiming at actually a really peaceful mind. Likewise with body, you know, the amount of people I meet that say, you know, I'm not bothered about setting a body goal 5 years down the line. I'm not bothered. It's like, okay, fair enough. You go and abuse that body, or you go and not set a body goal, and you'll find yourself at some point, my bet is at some point between now and the day you die, you'll be forced to set a body goal. And that might be, bloody hell, I should have slowed down so I didn't give myself that heart attack, or bloody hell, I wish I didn't do this, or I wish I didn't do that. So again, for the body goal, it might just be as simple as giving myself the best chance of succeeding in sales without dying early on my kids because of the stress of it all. And it might be a health perspective. And then finally, from a purpose and meaning, you know, I'm not going to sit here with the answer as to how people can find the purpose and the meaning, but for me, it's going out there and just playing around with the real world, finding what gives you a real good rush of dopamine. For me, 20-30 grand became irrelevant once you'd earned it once or twice, especially when you were blowing it. So for me, my meaning came in helping other people. All of a sudden, I realized that, you know, one of the reasons I tried to kill myself in my early 20s was because I thought nobody had ever been through a situation as specific and local as mine, with a childhood sweetheart. And, you know, if someone would have just shown me and said, actually, you know, I went through it and I was all right, then I'd have been fine. So I've then started to find my purpose and my meaning, which is just be who someone else needs. And for me, it might even be as black and white as one of my staff members. And that might be in any of them areas. Most of the time it's with work, and it's just be the person they need to help them hit their quota, which then I'll fall back onto my previous study. But effectively what I'll do is I'll set a goal 3 or 5 years out. And what I've been doing in the last 2 to 3 years is, every single Monday, I will effectively plan my week ahead, and I will work out with, when I'm planning my week ahead, at what point, and sorry, not at what point, how much of my time, how much of my focus, how much of my energy do I want to spend in each of these areas? And it isn't always as black and white. You'll hear this nowadays, work-life balance. You know, you'll feel guilty for working too much. You'll feel guilty for not working enough. So for me, I think the answer there is it needs to be fluid. You know, sometimes there'll be a family event, a good one, birthday, bad one, crisis. Sometimes there'll be a work event, you know, a good one, smashed quota for the month after week one. Could be a bad one, you know, 2 days away from the end of the year and I really need to get a deal over the line. The point is, you're lying to yourself if you think every week's the same. Every week's going to look different. So the first thing I'll do on a Monday morning, and I genuinely will do this, I'm looking at this week's in front of me, is I will write down, so week commencing 21st of August, mind and body, career, family, meaning. What do I want to achieve that week? What's gone on in the external world? Is there something that needs to drive my focus? And again, you might be thinking, well, what's the right answer? The answer is it changes. You know, if you're in a time of family crisis and you've just smashed your sales quota, you might be planning your week ahead and saying to yourself, I'm going to spend some more time with my family. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And for me, having that framework and constantly being able to hold myself to account with that, it's what started to bring it all together for me.
And could you talk a bit about balancing these four? Because, you know, I'm aware you can't really put 100% into all four at the same time all the time. It's just not going to work, right? So how do you do it? Do you have just periods where you're more focused on maybe spending more time with the family, work takes more of a back seat, or like how do you do that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll do what feels like a stock take every Monday morning. So when I'm planning my week ahead, I'll write week commencing, then I'll write the day. Then I'll actually go as far as plotting out each of my days, and I'll plot all of my scheduled meetings and all of my must attends. And then I've got a bit of a map as to what the crucials are. What I'll then do is I'll just sit and I'll have a think, as I just said. So this often changes. If, for example, I am at the start of a month or at the start of a quarter, what I might think with my week is, right, I'm gonna really dedicate myself to my team, which means I'm going to really spend a lot of time training them this week. I'm going to make myself present in the office every single day to be on hand to answer their questions.
Yeah.
And actually, that means that every single day I'm going to do 3 hours round trips worth of driving and 10 hours sat in the office. Now I'll do it for this week. Actually, if I'm doing that, something's going to give, because I'm not going to have time to do the working out I want to do. I'm not going to have time to spend the time I want to spend with my family that week. And I'm certainly not going to have time to help the people I want to help outside of work, which is totally fine, as I said, because what I'll then do the week after is I'll make an allowance, and I'll think, right, well, last week I absolutely hammered it from a work perspective. So it's right now that I spend some of my focus in other areas. In answer to your question as to sort of what do you use as the gauge, this is why it's really important to set that goal, because once you've set that goal 3 years out, this is where the sort of secret weapon comes in. You can then reverse engineer it into what you need to do, day ahead, week ahead, month ahead. So again, a live example I would use, let's say I was sat there with no job right now, and I wanted to be head of sales at an energy firm, and that was my 3 year goal. I would say, right, 3 years out, so August 26, I want to be head of sales. If I'm to do that in 36 months, where do I need to be in 30 months? And I would step it back in a little timeline. So if I want to be head of sales in 36 months, then I probably need to be the best salesperson in 30 months. Okay, so if I'm to be the best salesperson in 30 months, what does that even look like? Well, that probably looks like 6 months of consistent success. So in order to have had 6 months of consistent success by month 30, I will need to have had at least 1 month of success by month 24, because how can I have 6 months of it if I've never even succeeded once? Okay, so in order to have 1 month of success by 24 months from now, and I would work out what that looks like, it might be 150k profit within a month. What am I going to need to have by 18 months from now? Well, in order to have 150k profit in 1 month, in 24 months' time, then in 6 months before that, in 18 months' time, you'd probably want to see a pipeline with at least, I don't know, 4 or 5 times of that in value. So then, right, okay, in order to achieve that pipeline in 18 months' time, what do I need to have done by 12 months' time? Well, I need to have actually been out and been seeing companies and been engaging and been doing discovery calls and been getting data from them in order to build proposals. Right, in order to be doing that in 12 months' time, what do I need to be doing in 6 months' time? Well, in 6 months' time, I need to be bloody working for an energy company, because currently I don't even have a job. And in this grand 3 year plan, I don't even have a job. So in 6 months' time, I need to be working and I need to be cleared and going out meeting companies, which means that actually, and this is where it gets interesting, because then you can start going in shorter time spans. So if I want to be working in an energy firm in 6 months' time, realistically, I'm going out seeing customers in 6 months' time. That means that I need to have started my job in 3 months' time. And if I'm to have started my job in 3 months' time, that means I probably need to have started my interviews in 6 weeks' time. And that's good. And if I'm to have started my interviews in 6 weeks' time, I need to have been considered probably in 4 weeks' time at a push. And if that's to be the case, then I need to have at least submitted my CV with 5 energy companies in the next 2 weeks. So then going back to your earlier question, I would then look and think, right, bam, there's my map. There's what most people don't have, by the way. If you were to drive from your house to my house, the first thing you would do is put it in your sat nav or pick up a map. Most people don't even write a map for where they want to go. Here, we've got the map. So what I would then do is say, right, I've got a week to build my CV and send it to 5 energy companies. currently, I'm about to plan my week ahead. First question that I'm asking myself is, have I built my CV? Second question I'm asking myself is, do I know the companies I'm going to send it to? Now, if my answer to those questions is, yes, I've got my CV, and yes, I know who I'm applying to, when I'm scheduling my week ahead, that would just be an hour on a Monday morning. So actually, it's send my CV to these 5 people that I've already built, and then I'll fill out the rest of my goals. And actually, I'll have done it early on and I'll be buzzing with it. However, there might be some people that might have the same goal. They'll be sat there on a Monday morning. They don't even have the CV. They don't know who the top 5 energy companies are, let alone who to apply to. And they'll be thinking, right, well, for my week ahead, I'm probably going to need to spend almost all of my time in the work section. You know, I go back to my very first day when I found out that I was having a baby at 17. Did I have a good work-life balance the day after I found that out when I was applying for jobs from 9 till 5 and I had 70 job applications that day? Probably not. But a week later, I got a job that enabled me to earn more money than any of my friends, which in turn gave me a family life that was totally inaccessible. So I think for me, going back to the question, and the short answer would be set that goal 3 to 5 years out. What you then need to do is work out, in order to achieve this in 3 years, where do I need to be in 2? Where do I need to be in 18 months? Where do I need to be in 12 months? Right the way down to what I need to be doing in the week ahead. And again, once you've done that, your map will tell you what you need to do on a Monday morning. If you've done that for all 4 areas, you know, and again, I've done this with people in sales environments. I've done this with my staff. I've done this, you know, I was at a really interesting age because I've been through all these things through my 20s. So I've had problems with salespeople that I've had to try and turn around, problems with my friends who in their early 20s wanted families, mid 20s all of a sudden didn't have the job they wanted, didn't have the wife they wanted, coming up to the late 30s, they're now really panicking about not having any kids and not having the career. And I've managed to do a similar thing for them. And we've gone from getting people who were stuck in the bedroom at the mum's in what felt like a bit of a dead-end job and with no way out because they were running out of time and approaching their late 20s, if not 30s. We've actually stepped it all back and we now know what we need to do each week. We now know what we need to do each day. So I think, yeah, create the map for yourself, get that end goal, step it right back, and then just create the map and then just pick it up and read it every Monday, so to speak, would be the abstraction.
So we're coming up to the last few minutes here. I think I feel a part 2 coming on because there's loads more.
Yeah, definitely. We're not even started.
Yeah. What I was going to say is about perspective, the perspective that this gives you taking this approach, right? We talked about this before. So if you know where you need to be or where you want to be 3 years, 5 years, whatever from now, suddenly those setbacks that you face day to day will be very insignificant. You know, you might lose, you might stub a toe, whatever it is, it's not going to put you out as much as it would if you were very short-term focused and didn't have that map that you were talking about.
Absolutely. And you know, for some people, stubbing a toe, if all they've got as a goal is to run a marathon in 2 weeks and they've not set any goals in any other scenarios or in any of the other categories, something as topical as stubbing a toe could be the end of the world for them. So I think this is why it's even more important. For me, my strap line here is, once you've set that goal in each of these categories, obstacles become irrelevant and irrelevant objects become tools. And the way of explaining this, I always say, is, you know, if you're listening to this right now and I was to say to you, right now, get your answers over to me on an email. And if you can tell me the answer, great. Every time I've said the letter O, if you can let me know, I'll send you £15 million. Then the answer is no one would have a clue how many times I'd said the letter O. But if before we'd started listening to this podcast, I said, right, everyone, this is a £15 million podcast. And the aim is to count how many times this man says, oh, and if you do, you win 15 million. I can guarantee everyone listening to this podcast so far will have forgotten everything I was saying about my life and about sales. And all we will have been doing is writing down the amount of O's. You know, another example, you're looking for your mobile phone. You don't know where it is. Might be in your car boot. You open the boot, you'll scan 100 different objects. If one of them isn't your phone, you can't remember any of them. If I said to you, go and open your boot, you've got 10 seconds. I'll give you £5,000 for every item you can list. You'll come back and I'll owe you a scary amount of money, put it that way. Similar thing. So set them goals, and they make things that would really grip your emotions become irrelevant. And they also make things that would be really, really irrelevant as me saying the letter O, become the most useful tools you could ever come across.
Brilliant.
There we go.
Let's say no, it's great. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah. Any other thoughts, and we can wrap it up there, and maybe do a second one, unless any sort of closing thoughts.
I think absolutely. I think in the second one we'll get into the crux of the sales side of things. Because what we've not talked around, and what I would love to share with people is some of the processes we've put in place. You know, I had a 3-year plan when I took over my team. We were doing less than £1 million in revenue. Within year one, we almost trebled that. Year two, we're on track to do in excess of 6 million. Year three, we will, hit in excess of 8 figures. So we want to share some of that in part two. But I think before I move off some of the personal stuff and some of the secret weapons I've found with goal setting, one thing that's really helped me over the years is reading biographies, studying other people, not just people that are alive in my day and age. So not just your top 40, your successful businessmen, your successful business women, although they are great because you can see what hurdles they came up against, but people of history as well. And I think the reason I find it really important to study people you would admire, or people you do admire, is when you read what they went up against in life and the decisions they made and the outcome they achieved, much of life's setbacks, if you will, are created in our own mind. Oh, an issue has popped up. I don't know what to do. And I've catalogued all sorts of things that might come up if I make this error. Reading autobiographies and studying other people, certainly in sales, and I learned so much just by listening to salespeople, listening to things like this. It's almost like solving a puzzle that you've been trying to solve for hours and hours and hours. And then, one of these Japanese puzzles, the minute you solve it once, bam, I know it's done. I can do it again and again and again. So things like this, I'm absolutely all for. And another big piece of advice for people who might even be struggling to set their goals might be just to find someone you admire, find someone you would abstract to in each of these areas. If you don't know where you want to be with your mind and your body in 3 years' time, find someone who is where you want to be or looks like it might be all right, and paint that as the picture, and then start reading about them and reading what they went through. So yeah, no, by all means, let's chat again. But I think I wanted to give people that little nugget as well.
Thanks, Jordan. That's brilliant, and that's a nice little bit of a teaser for the next one as well. So we'll get that sorted soon. Great.
Absolutely.
Anyone who wants to find you, connect with you, where can people find you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn at the minute is my only platform. So LinkedIn, Jordan Rassas, or the Inenco company page, you'll find me hovering around on there, but really passionate about this kind of stuff. So if you do want to reach out, I'll aim to get back to people as quickly as possible, and we can explore any of the stuff that we've touched on. But I think the best thing is going to be to stay tuned, because we'll be back on again, hopefully soon.
Yeah, we certainly will. All right. Cheers, Jordan. See you soon, mate.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. Cheers.